Hi, my dear. Hi, everybody. I'm Tiffany Johnson. I have a company called We Too Shall Pass. I'm here with my dear friend, Dr. Lydia Manning, with her company, Circle of Life. We've decided to come together and create this beautiful retreat experience coming up March 14th through the 17th up in northern Wisconsin on Lake Superior at Wild Rice Retreat Center. It's an all-inclusive, gorgeous space in the wilderness, and we thought it was the perfect backdrop for this really juicy conversation that we keep having together, and we want to invite others to join us. I think it could be really nourishing to bring women together and talk about what it means to really delve into this beautiful wisdom that comes with aging and entering this phase in life that feels well, it really is a modern version of croning, and what that looks like for women, and how we can embrace that and the wisdom that comes along with it, right?
Yeah. Yeah, we get to come together again. I love our fireside chats and thinking about these really important topics. We get to talk about them here together in this space, and I'm really looking forward to the Wise Women Retreat, learning to love your inner crone. As Tiffany said, it'll be March 14th through the 17th in Bayfield, Wisconsin at Wild Rice, and that's where we're going to dig really deep and do some fun and emboldening work around wisdom, around spirituality, and around ritualizing these later years for women as they grow older. Mm-hmm. I'm Lydia Manning. I'm a gerontologist. I'm an expert on aging, longevity, living vibrantly, living visibly, and probably doing all the things that you don't yet know how to do to piss everybody off as you grow older. We were just talking about the beauty that comes with being an inconvenient woman.
Yeah.
So today we're gonna so the Wild Woman, Wise Women Retreat,
and wild.
Name Freudian slip is wild.
I love that.
At Wild Rice. Is again a space where we're going to do some of these deep discussions around spirituality and around aging and around legacy and around living and around getting ready to not live and what all that might look like. But we thought today we'd just sort of unpack spirituality and the linkages to what aging is and can be, and particularly gendered aging. How does spirituality matter for women as we age? And just a little more context, if it's of interest. So this happens to be actually one of my research areas. I've said in the past, I'm a recovering academic. I spent many years researching older women, collecting deep narratives around spirituality and the lived experience and lived lives, mainly for women of the oldest old, meaning 85 plus. And that work led me to really being able to understand resilience and spiritual resilience. And so I have this soft spot in my heart for these multi-dimensional, really hard to measure and sometimes ineffable experiences, and spirituality is one of those things. So I'm excited to be able to, we can talk about it and kind of unpack it and do some thinking around it.
Yeah, I'm grateful for that, because there's so many, we all come to this stage where we're talking about, or we're kind of in these later years, we've brought in experience, but we also, like I was saying to you earlier, this sort of deep inner knowing that has just come out naturally, and trying to figure out what to do with that and how that relates to our spirituality, how that relates to our relationships and communication and collective things that then we can then share with others.
Yeah. And it's like that inner knowing, right? And it's also trusting it,
Yeah.
Great. So how, let's think about what spirituality is, right?
Yeah.
And so my question for you would be what is that? What does spirituality mean to you?
To me, so it's evolved. I would say I grew up in a somewhat traditional northern Wisconsin home and environment where Christianity was sort of the forefront of teachings. But I also didn't grow up in a church environment. So my experience, very fortunately, I do think I have a little bit of a fortunate childhood in that spirituality was always ever present. It was openly discussed as just sort of a way of connecting with earth and one another. in this way of like, well, what does it mean to you? And so again, my mom had this Christian background, and she would have friends over, and I remember falling asleep as a little girl, like kind of crawled under the coffee table listening to them sing and praise and have worship in that way. And it was a very beautiful experience, as opposed to, I think, maybe I, in contrast, heard of a lot of friends who grew up around spirituality, meaning religion, and being in a church environment. And it was very, designated to that structure and that building and what happened at that time. And then you could try to apply it outside of there. But so I didn't have that. I had an idea of what faith meant to people, how they lived through it. And I found solace in it. I found there was trust in faith, and there was in nature. Like I was taught that God was in everywhere in growth and in life, all forms of life. And so I just had a very open relationship with talking to nature. Not even now in older years, I see a lot of what I believe to follow more Native American ritual and belief systems. And I love now as a death doula, I hadn't mentioned in this podcast yet, but my background working with people at end of life and walking them through their sort of life review and what has worked for them or not, and then how they're relating to what this sort of next chapter is that nobody really knows for sure. And witnessing the comforts through ritual and ceremony that are brought in during that time of life. I've been able to just be like a student of all these gorgeous lives and try and emphasize and listening and creating a safe space for those people, and maybe practicing some religion or not religion, ritual and ceremony with them based on their religious background, see what works and what doesn't. And so so spirituality for me, I guess, to wrap that, is a very individual journey. I love that there are things that humans have done to connect one another through ritual, and those practices can be very comforting and almost help people dive deeper into their faith. And also that there is spirituality all around us, and it's in whatever we want it to be in. And that's what I love about it. So that's my journey. What about for you?
Yeah, I mean, it's loaded, right? That's what I love about it, is because it is so complex. And for our listeners out there, you can think about, for you, what does spirituality mean for you? For me, it's a cosmic connection to other, right? It's like something outside of my personal space, right? It's like my own energetic space. It's like this connection to a greater sense of deep love and deep connection and a deep sense of awe, right? And sometimes that's God or goddess, or
some names can be anything.
Yeah, like I've actually written sometimes, like, instead of God or spelling out goddess, I'll put a G and then a line and then a D, or a line and then an S, right? Where it's like you can kind of fill that space in for whatever that means to you. If you look at some of the research, and this is what was so intriguing with me when I was first sort of embarking on these journeys about what the heck is this? How do you measure it? Can you prove it? We often treat religion and spirituality as a interchangeable variable in science. And to me, there's such a profound difference in this dogmatic, more structured space where humans are very actively orchestrating in a religious capacity, right? What this feels like and what it looks like, to the more spiritual sense that I don't think spirituality and religion are synonymous, right? Like, I think they're different. And yeah, I think, again, there's this cosmic connection to where we've come from and where we're going. And I would imagine in your work too, as an end-of-life doula, and when you're working with people, and maybe this is why I love aging so much and people at end of life. And I also really love babies. younger children, I appreciate, of course, I love all children, but there's like little babies and then people who are, I think people are closer to the spiritual world when they first get here and when they're
Ends
about
of
to
the
leave
spectrum.
here, because the ether is thinner, and I think the veils of those spaces are a little bit more liminal. And for us in midlife, I think we get really conditioned to not operate and connect with the spiritual realm.
Yeah.
Realm meaning like the community.
Because we're
you know?
so here. We're
Yeah.
so having to deal
And
with
we're
the
busy.
what's in front of
Yeah,
us.
and we got this and we got that, right? It's
Yeah.
like, so I don't know. I mean, spirituality, what is it? I think it's loaded, and you're right. It's very individual, and it means different things for different people, and it changes, which is what's so cool, right? It's like a journey.
That is probably one of my
Yeah.
favorite parts,
Yeah.
is that there's no right or wrong,
Right.
honestly. Like, I'm always a do no harm. And then beyond that,
Right.
truly have your journey. I've always felt like, even too, so many friends and loved ones I've been around who have no faith necessarily in what is again, this like those I use the word God very loosely because it's just the one we all sort of understand to be that cosmic energy you were talking about too. But that idea of, okay, if they believe, or if any individual is like, yeah, when I'm done, I really believe I'm done. My experience is over when I'm no longer in this vessel. And that's, I've noticed sometimes a unique challenge towards end of life.
Mm-hmm.
And when people are addressing it, it doesn't faze me at all, because I think, oh, but what's so beautiful is this experience you've had in this body, in this lifetime, is not for nothing, right? It's you have forever changed. Whoever has interacted with you, whatever experience you've left, that legacy is so very true, regardless of if you have a spiritual knowing or belief, because the ripple effect of your existence is forever going to affect anything that was in your periphery throughout your existence. So I think even that alone, to me, is a version of spirituality.
Yep. I think all people are all humans, all animals, all living creatures have spiritual capacity, right? And I know that's my belief. And so often in my research, if you've read any of my work, I'll own that bias, because some people don't agree. Like for them, they don't necessarily believe in a spiritual world or a realm or a, but for me, that's what, as humans, I just think we all have the capacity for it, particularly around energy, right? Like we're energetic critters. And so I'm not a physicist, but I know, right, energy really can't be created, and it certainly can't be destroyed. And so it just makes me really wonder about, when we're not in this human vessel, where do we go, and what does that realm look like? And maybe that's a whole nother conversation and a different podcast, but I do think it's linked to spirituality.
Yeah.
I know we talked earlier too about spirituality and women and what does that mean. And from some of my work and my experiences, and maybe this is true for you or some of our listeners out there, I feel like spirituality offers a place of safety, particularly when it's by your own design.
Very much so, yeah.
For us as women to grow older, right? There's this gratitude and this acceptance and this sort of space that you get to be who you are, and that's love. And we're all loved and we're all celebrated for that. And there's a spiritual component, at least in my mind, of that as we would think about aging and aging women. So thinking about spirituality and women and our retreat, right? Because spirituality is such a big part of Wise Women and what we're doing about in loving to learn your inner crone. I think it's important to let some of our listeners know that, some of our interest, right, around croning and around spirituality, at least for me, was birthed out of doing research with old crones. Right?
Yes.
And so I was lucky enough 20-something years ago in the hills of Vermont to meet women who blew my mind, right? And this was, I'm 46. How old was I then? 20-something. I was a baby, right?
But I were drawn to this.
And I've always been fascinated with women. But a lot of women that I had known at that point were sort of more influenced by like mainstream culture and having discussions, rightfully so, about menopause. And I don't know, like I met these women and they identified as crones, legit old witches. Like many of them were pagan, some of them were Wiccan, and they would gather regularly. And I was lucky enough to be invited to some of their women's gatherings, and they were burning things and dancing around fires and having these rituals and talking about these really juicy conversations around aging. And I thought, wow, these women are doing this in ways I haven't seen in my lily, as you say, wonder bread Midwestern experience of aging.
Yeah.
So I decided when I was getting my master's that I was going to research old pagans. And I found them right in Ohio. And I got to interview these women, and in the process, really started to understand that they were talking about crones, being crones, and croning in a very articulate, defined way. It wasn't this generic, the old hag in me, the crone. Like you see some of the modern books.
Modern connotation.
Yeah, where it's like I picked up these books about crones. And it's not about crones at all. It's about aging women in like a more monolithic culture. And I'm like, wait a minute, there's like an actual ritualistic experience. Like people perform croning ceremonies and there's a whole thing around it. And so I was able to learn about it and really appreciate it and came to value it. And then many years later was asked by a woman if I would help her create her ritual to become her version of a crone. And so I realized like this is healing and healthy and wonderful for all of us, right? So that's, in some ways, right? It's like, what is croning? How are we doing this retreat? What is it about? How does crone fit into the retreat?
Yeah.
Not only do we learn about our spiritual selves and the time that we'll have together at Wise Women in Wisconsin, but we will pull together a collective ceremony and a ritual where women are going to be able to mark and create an identity for them around what it means as you embrace this new stage of life as you grow older.
It's a very empowering, very fulfilling, very life affirming kind of an experience. And this sort of, just like we celebrate a graduation or we celebrate, or young women, I know many people have transitioned, when they enter that part of womanhood, really marking that time. So it's almost really creating a safe space to do that, where we celebrate each other and we celebrate this wisdom and what marking that can mean. So it's like a new beginning. It's not really, as so many people age, we often think of things ending or winding things down. But there's really this beautiful new beginning that we aren't acknowledging as a whole. So this is an opportunity to do that.
And menopause is a big part of it.
Oh, yeah.
Because of course it's built around these spaces of transitioning and what you can do with your body and what you don't do with your body. And I think it just invites a whole new, I don't know, like a liberated stage and space and time in people's lives. And it's exciting to work with women as we unpack it and make meaning and explore it and care for ourselves in the process.
Yeah.
The retreat's going to be great, y'all. We have our itinerary together. We know what we're doing.
There's movement.
You are in really great hands, and we're hoping that people will come, women will come and be a part of it.
Absolutely. We're really going to address this in a very holistic way. The process that we see is so very valuable to acknowledge and go through, between movement and my background in art therapy, and we're going to do these activities, like really get our hands on actual material. But
we're going to get our hands dirty.
We're going to get our hands dirty. Be ready for that. And then get into nature. That's part of why I think this space where the retreat is so perfect for what we're doing. I think going on these nature walks, appropriate to everyone's ability and level. This place has such accessible area, and you can also go out and get lost. And be on your own. I think we've built in time where this isn't always together experience, because this is such a personal journey also. Building in that time to write and journal, reflect, and very intentionally put thoughts down about legacy. We were talking about legacy for a while, and what we want that to look like, what it feels like to actually sit and imagine. That's, I've seen it from the ancestry, the lineage I've come from. I'm so proud of the bits and pieces I've learned from the women that were in my family, but I wish I knew more. And so it makes me think about, okay, well, what do I want my legacy to look like? If there are things that I'm wishing or missing, I have an opportunity to change that direction, turn the wheel a little bit, and really guide any future generations beyond me as to what I feel is important for them to think about or remember about me. And then also really that idea of planning and preparation. We really get to move into a space of not only how do we live this sort of next phase of our lives, but to really, we do know it's valuable because there's a stop point, right? We have an expiration for this vessel. So that's my piece. I love to help people in a really safe, very encouraging way think about, how do you want to leave this world? What, beyond legacy, even just the specifics of how do you want that disposition to look, or we were talking earlier about how beautiful would it be to even imagine the idea of writing your own obituary. What would that look like?
Don't leave it up to somebody else.
A grandchild that had like she didn't leave me what? I'll write a bit. So no, right? So like, what does that look like? And to even try that on for size with individuals. Maybe you come to the retreat with a loved one, like a sister or sister, and like
friends, or
some
grandmother, or you know what I mean, like
a bestie that you haven't seen from high school, and like they've known you of your past, and now you've grown, and like, wow, who are you now? And let's go through this together, because I have that just like incredible history with you. And I think I think bringing someone would be kind of the ideal in my mind. But also, if you don't have that, what an amazing sort of sisterhood and connection to have people from all walks of life to learn from on their experiences, and to really be supported in this space. I think we can
create some community around it.
Yeah, right. And moving forward, if people create connections, and I've certainly done that with the spaces I've gone and met I love meeting total strangers, and sometimes the most beautiful bonds come from having that fresh, clean start, and then moving forward from there. So.
And I feel like that's the work in many ways of being a crone, right? Like if this is about learning to love your inner crone, it is about coming together and about convening with or without crystals, and communing and doing the hard work of thinking about this stuff and talking about it and planning and diving deep and having sometimes uncomfortable conversations, other times liberating ones. Like that's what crones do. Like they think about the here and now. They think about where they've come from, their grandmothers who weren't burned at the stake, right? And then where they're going, right? If, like you said, when your expiration date for this vessel comes to, what's next, right? Yeah. Like crones think about that stuff, and they talk about it. That's probably why they make people uncomfortable, but it's important.
Yeah, we're not going to be talking about the weather. Right? We're going deep, and we're getting juicy quick. Because our time is valuable. I think that's the other part of this stage of life. We do understand there's just taking nothing for granted.
No, and you don't get it back. Right.
So let's make the most of it. That's what
It's an investment in your future self, current self, past self. So join us, wise women, learning to love your inner crone. It's going to be a wonderful time, and we look forward to being able to care for, support, and journey with you in this retreat.
Teach me your ways. I'll share a few of mine, and let's convene, as we say. Thank you so much for listening to our short little talk about spirituality and aging, and as a woman embracing our croning and those years. And if you have more questions, go to the link. We would love to have you or answer any future questions.
For any of our readers, if you want resources or more information, you know where to find us online. Reach out to us and continue the conversation.